Hi, everyone. I am Deanne Mazzochi, your state representative, currently representing Illinois' 47th House District. I'm so glad that you joined us today for this webinar introduction into financial literacy, and we're calling it our Finance 101 workshop. We'll just go ahead and go to the next slide. So to those of you watching, I just want to say congratulations. The fact that you're watching this is probably already setting you apart from many of your peers. We know that particularly for high school and college age students, you are in a critical stage of life, and learning how to take control and manage your finances well is going to be key to putting you on a long-term pathway for success. And that's because ultimately, for better or for worse, money does matter. Nearly half of Americans are not going to they're not expecting that they're going to have enough money to retire comfortably by the time they reach retirement age. We're at a point in time where credit card debt has reached its highest point ever. Student loan debt is off the charts. And in fact, even 40% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency expense if they happen to get hit with it out of the blue. So that's why, again, we're here today to just talk about financial literacy and things that you can do to hopefully set yourself up on a good financial path. With us today, I'm very pleased to introduce Yaw Kessie. He is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Springfield and currently works with the Illinois Comptroller's Office. The Comptroller is the office with the state of Illinois that manages the state finances, pays the bills. So they have a firsthand view into the types of things that not only hopefully will set our state up for financial success, but also for you as well. As we're going along, if you do have any questions, you can certainly go ahead and put them in the chat box. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can also put them in the comment section, and we're going to be watching those as well. I'll go to the next slide. We'll put this up again at the very end. But if you do have any concerns, or if there's any questions that you suddenly come up with and we didn't manage to get to them today, please feel free to reach out to me by email. My email is Mazzochi, Mazzochi, at ilhousegop.org. So IllinoisHouseGOP.org. You can also find us at our website, repmazzochi.com. So REPMAZZOCHI.com. And if you'd like to go it the old-fashioned way and call the office, you can do that as well by calling 630-852-8633. So with that, I will again thank you everybody for joining, and let me turn the floor over to Mr. Kessie. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for that. Share the screen. All right, sorry, 1 second. Try to share the screen. All right, sorry about that. All right, so my name is Yaw Kessie. I'm with the Illinois Office of Comptroller, working in Constituent Affairs Division. As part of our Smart Consumers Illinois program, one of our 3 programs that Constituent Affairs oversees, one being this one, Smart Consumers Illinois, another one being Smart Business, and another one being Bank On. Smart Consumers Illinois, we basically provide basic finance 101 information, as well as consumer theft and fraud information and prevention, as well as those are the programs, as well as Next Steps. And Next Steps is a kind of a blend of Finance 101 and just more so targeted for graduating high school seniors and individuals that are entering college or in the workforce. So I'll begin. All right, so before we talk about like finances, the first thing we will want to do is just basically examine our current financial reality. Like before I even like start my day and before I even go about anything, I have to understand where my finances are. Like that is going to determine how much I have, how much I have to spend, and how much I have to save. And also I think about my future goals. What is it that I have that I want to achieve? Is there a car I want to buy? Is there a house that I potentially want to buy? So these are all things that you have to examine when you talk about finances. You have to examine your current financial reality. That way you don't have your expectations don't meet reality. So if your income doesn't match with expenses, then it's just a lot of things to evaluate at this moment and at that point when you examine your financial literacy. So when we talk about statistics, the numbers are quite staggering when we talk about statistics and we talk about finances in America. Less than 1 in 4 Americans have enough money in savings to cover at least 6 months worth of expenses. And 42% of people in the US have not saved for retirement. State rep mentioned, this is a big, and it's troubling because most individuals don't have that emergency funding and anything can happen at any moment. And not having those emergency funds, although when that moment comes, it's like, okay, it's a harsh reality, but having that information, when you're privy to that information and you prepare yourself for those rainy days, and so that way you can be prepared and be well prepared in situations where maybe you might have to take some time off of work. And if your work is a salary and it's hourly, that might be something that could really affect you. Or there's a lot of things, even when COVID first took place, when I'm sure there was just a lot of going on with the climate in the world, especially in America. So it changes things, and having those emergency funds definitely can help you and help you for the future, for the unforeseen circumstances that have yet to come. All right. Credit card debt in our country is at $13 trillion and student loan debt is at 1.5 trillion. Student loan debt is big. I think when I went to university, unfortunately, my parents didn't save as far as like just getting me prepared for university or college. And not saying that I don't blame them for anything, because I made it happen as far as receiving student loans, but also I knew not to just drown in student loans. I knew to take certain options as far as exploring scholarship options, exploring financial aid and relief that I could potentially qualify for. And all of those things make a huge and tremendous difference, because student loan debt is serious. It's there. It's prevalent. And the thing that I kind of want to like stress with student loan is like a lot of students get student loans, and the amount of money that so I think the thing is you have to analyze student loan, how much student loan debt you're getting out, and also analyze how much money you see your potential job paying you and how much that job potentially pay you, and see if it weighs out. That's something that is definitely kind of helped me envision and kind of like make the right decision, or what I feel was the right decision, to not drown in debt. Unnecessary spending is something that I think a lot of people do. I can't say most people. I want to say most people, but I can't speak for everyone. But unnecessary spending is something that happened. I unnecessarily spent today. I bought some food for work rather than packing my lunch. Granted, I did it one day out of the week, but those impulse buys and those impulse decisions can be costly, especially if it's on a daily. If I do it every day, I work Monday to Friday. So if I'm working Monday through Friday and I'm buying food that's upwards of $15 a day, that can add up. And that's just unnecessary spending that I could have towards my savings, or just put up for a rainy day. Unused membership. This is pretty common. I also had I had a gym membership and I would not go to the gym. Did underutilize the gym. However, just because I didn't utilize it doesn't mean that they stopped payment. The payments were still flowing through. And it wasn't until I had to physically go into the location to stop my membership. But those are forms of just unnecessary spending, and that's how that money could really add up, even though it might not seem as nothing in the forefront. But when you think about it in greater aspect, that money that you unnecessarily spending could really save you in the future. And as State Rep mentioned, $400, most Americans half Americans don't have $400 for emergency savings. And when we talk about impulse buys and unused memberships and also credit card interest, which is big, those dollars add up, and they could really help us when they're needed. And even if it's not needed, it's just to have that comfortability knowing that that money is there. It's definitely it's a comfortability thing. It feels good rather than having it than had to have not. So in ways, we spoke of ways how you can unnecessarily spend. Let's talk about as far as cutting expenses. ATM fees. Major consumer banks netted $438 million in revenue from ATM fees in the first quarter of this year alone. So when we talk about ATM fees, there's various ways where ATM fees are charging you, whether you're using an ATM that's not supported by your financial institution, or that's generally the most cases what it's going to be. Or if you don't have, or if your financial institution or your card is from just a financial service provider rather than a financial institution. And I can figure like a lot of these a lot of the fintech companies and a lot of the financial tech companies that have the cards and stuff like that, generally they might give you a list of free ATMs that are within their provider. But once you step outside of that provider, you're spending fees, and those fees add up, and it could be very costly. So be sure when you're using your debit or credit card, when you're trying to withdraw fees, be sure that well, if you're trying to save money, I get it. Sometimes it's quick and it's convenient, but if you want to cut some expenses, try to check to see that ATM is with your financial institute or your financial service provider is in the network of that ATM. Bring your lunch. I mentioned this earlier about me impulse buying today. This statistic here says you can save on average of $2,000 a year by bringing your own lunch to work instead of eating out. And with coffee, I don't know how many of you individuals drink coffee, but this one here says about $90 a month. And although these numbers may seem like, oh, they're like staggering, or it might seem like, oh, well, that's impossible. Like I said, today I spent almost $15. And if I was to continue that 5 days, that definitely would add up. So yeah, I'll be at $75 a week just on food. So that $2,000 a year seems way realistic when you think about it in terms of breaking down the days and understanding how that could be impactful. Also, coffee, whatever it is, even if it's water, whatever, just try to bring your own lunch and be prepared. That way you don't have to spend elsewhere. Save you a great chunk of money. Cable, phone, and internet. I'm not sure like where we all are at a point if we all need these services, but these are the most common basic services that most people have. So maybe you should shop around. Companies will compete for your business. I recently purchased a home, and when I purchased a home, it was outside of I couldn't switch my company because my company didn't provide in the service area that I now live in. Instead of me just going with the first option that came my way, I kind of quoted around. I quoted around for best prices. And yeah, I didn't just go. I quoted around with best prices, see if they had any bundle deals and see if I could get cable and phone and internet for a deal, and which actually happened and turned out in my favor. I got cable, phone, internet, and security services for a great deal that I really couldn't beat as far as just a thought. I actually called around and I laid the groundwork. I compared one company versus the next, and I just did that over and over again until I felt it was sufficient enough and decided, okay, this works better. I'm getting more bang for my buck, and I went with that. So reevaluate your bills and look for yearly and monthly deals. And this not only just with cable, phone, and internet, whatever services you have. I tend to like call around, even even for the smallest thing, even if it's a prescription, I try to call around. I'm like, okay, well, if this prescription, I gotta make sure, see if a physician or pharmacy has it cheaper somewhere else. I like to save money. Some people call it frugal, whatever you want to call it. I just know that I rather have than have not, because it's just personally, it's a good feeling for me to just have that money and just be prepared. So, and all this information that I'm sharing, this is actually information that I take for myself as well. It's not just information that I'm just sharing that I don't use. Utilities, kind of just being green, being energy efficient. Just got to think about ways. Not only are you saving money, you're actually kind of saving the environment. When you're turning off the lights when they're not in use, unplugging your plugs when they're not in service, and also a thermostat. Now, this part, I know I just said I kind of try to follow everything, but again, I just bought a house, and well, I don't have like a thermostat. It's more so it's actually like a manual, one of the outdated ones. It's not digital. And I do believe that the programmable thermostat definitely makes a difference, because you can set the times and set peak times of where, okay, well, I'm going to run this around this time, run the air at this time, and then at this time it cuts off. Otherwise, if you have just the manual thermostats, it's going to run until it gets a certain temperature, and it can be all day. And also there are peak times to run certain utilities. When you're running your utilities, mainly the peak times that I'm running my utilities when I'm at home. Outside of that, the utilities aren't pretty much being used. So, but when I do use them, I'm also being mindful of everything that I use, whether it's the lights, water, whatever it is. I'm being mindful. I'm being green. I'm being energy efficient. Insurance is a big thing. I know I just spoke about prescriptions and things like that. So yeah, so this is kind of like the world I'm living in right now. The higher your deductible is, the lower your insurance premiums could be. By lowering your deductible, less out-of-pocket costs when making a claim. Also, make sure you're paying for the coverage that you need. Bundle, comparison, and shop. With the state, our fiscal year, like I guess just started when it comes to like insurance and things of that nature. So I had to sit down and actually go through the list. And I remember that probably was one of the scariest things for me when I first started in my career, got a real, like I knew like I had options, like, okay, well, here's a healthcare plan and you have to choose a healthcare plan. And I'm like, I'm scared at this point because I don't know nothing about deductibles. I don't know nothing about premiums, but I took the time and I researched so I can learn. Not only did I reached out to different outlets. It wasn't just Google. First step I did was I reached out to my parents, because I know that these are individuals who have been paying for insurance through their employers, but not just because they have it doesn't mean that they're knowledgeable about how it all goes down. So that way I got some information from him, and I also did the other research on with myself, understanding the difference between the HMO and PPO, and understanding the difference between, okay, well, the deductibles and premiums. That can definitely take you a long way, and that's just something that if you have the time, just take the time to just learn a little bit about the information. That way you're well aware of what's to go on or what's to come in the future. But again, the higher your deductible, the lower your insurance premiums could be. By lowering your deductible, the less out-of-pocket costs when making a claim. But also that you have to read the fine print. This might not work across the board. This might not be across the board. You read the fine print and choose what works for you. So your net income is your net pay minus your expenses. And that's your net income. That's how much you're bringing in. This is, if the result is positive, start to track, maintain, and save. If the result is negative, start identifying where to cut costs. If you're spending more than you're bringing in, then that's part of the reevaluation. The first thing I said, when you want to know your financial wellness, you have to know your reality, and also you have to know your goals. My financial goals might differ from someone else's financial goals. I'm not saving for a house. I just purchased a house. So I wouldn't be saving for a house, but there's other goals. So everyone's financial goals aren't the same. It's not going to be the same across the board. It's going to differentiate. So you have to understand what works for you and what works in your reality. You might not be getting paid as someone else. So with that being said, really try to understand what's going on. So as this slide says, if the result is positive, if your net income is positive after you have your expenses and everything, so that's your net income, and your result is positive, track, maintain, and save. Understand what it's doing. Like, take the time to really evaluate yourself in that situation or in your finances in that situation and see what it is that you're doing. How are you doing it? How are you able to maintain? And how can you continue to do this? That'll definitely put you in a nice position. And if the result is negative, that's not the worst thing in the world, because obviously you've been making it so far, but you have to start identifying where to cut costs. Where is the unnecessary spending coming from? Where are the unused memberships that you're paying for? Why is your electricity bill higher than what it should be, or your water bill, or whatever the case may be? These are things, or why your phone bill is so high. All of those are factors to try to, you have to identify where to cut costs. What is it that has your net income in the negative? And once you identify those key factors, you're in a nice position. And sorry, I didn't mention it before, is like the information that I'm providing you all is not like, again, like I want to mention that I'm not a financial guru or anything like that. This information is just basic information where the FTC provides, or just a lot of resources that are trusted resources provide. And this is just like basic, this is a basic financial information. And just having this information is not going to just make you a better person financially. However, having this information gives you the tools to know what to do to be better with your finances. And that's the point I really wanted to make in the beginning, but I'm glad I can make it now. Max out your contributions to your retirement account. That's if you can afford it, that's the best way to go. You want to max it out, because in return it's going to come back to you in return way more than you put in. But the thing is, when you, again, make sure that you have those funds available to max out. That way you're not spending more than what you can actually afford. But if you can't afford it, this might be a good option. Again, like I said about insurance, make sure that you're reading the terms and conditions of your retirement plans, and whatever the case may be. Just read the terms and conditions. Just take the time to just, however long it may be, just to read and understand what you're doing. Most of these things anyway, you're signing your signature, they give you the terms and conditions. So it'll help just to read, take some time to just, even if it's not those terms and conditions of what you're signing. Granted, because I know I've signed plenty of things and I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. But just taking the time to just do the background knowledge and doing the research definitely could take you a long way, definitely could save you money in the future. Credit. Now, let's talk about credit. Credit is your financial fingerprint. Credit just basically opens the doors for a lot of things, especially if you don't have finances up front. So credit is definitely your financial fingerprint. So types of credit. There's fixed rate versus variable rate credit. With resolving and unsecured credit cards. And then there's non-revolving and secured. Revolving and unsecured, there's credit cards. Those types of credit. Revolving credits and unsecured types of credits, like credit cards. A non-revolving and a secured form of credit would be like a mortgage or auto loan. So here's a loan example of auto loan. In this first example that I want to highlight over here to the left, here's the loan calculator that shows the auto loan being $15,000. The auto loan terms in years, I think that's 3%, or third terms in months, 36 months at a 3% interest rate. When we look down, we see that those monthly payments is actually broke down, and then you have principal amount, then you have interest, and then you have interest paid, and then it tells you how much is due. So basically, but then and it tells you when you could also pay that off. Oh, sorry. Basically, the point of this presentation is just to show you that when you read the fine prints and you understand what you're signing up for, you understand that I might be paying more in the future, in the long term. Like, so with this example, this individual have the two options to pay the loan off in a longer amount of time, or to pay it off in a short amount of time based off some payments. If they're paying a higher payment, that shortens the time. By July of 2018, that payment could be done. But by paying less payments, even though 269 versus 436 might not seem like a staggering difference, it's a difference in firm that makes a difference in terms of 2 years of additional payments just to clear that loan off. And also the total interest paid on that is greater than $1,000 if they were paying lower terms and months and a lower, or with the same interest rate. But sorry, the thing that I want basically people to understand with this situation and this as far as this loan, just understanding the interest and the interest that you pay into certain things, and just trying to and understanding that finances matter, because if you have the finances available, obviously you can pay a higher monthly payment. But if those finances aren't available, you might pay lower monthly payments. However, it'll take you longer in the long run. So just really examine what works best for you at all times. And again, I want to stress that just because something works for one individual doesn't mean that it's going to work across the board. So definitely try to see what works for you. This basically is saying read the fine print. With this, here's a balance of $944.95. Sorry, and the payment. Okay, and the minimum payment is just $19. And the late payment. This says if we do not receive your payment by the day listed above, you may have to pay up to a $39 late fee, and your APRs will be subject to an increase to a maximum penalty APR of 29.99%. That's an annual. That's over almost 30%, and that's extremely high. 30%, that's extremely high. And a minimum payment, they also give you a minimum payment warning, even though they have the minimum payment due listed. But if you make only the minimum payment each period, you would pay more in interest, and it would take you longer to pay off your balances. So essentially, that $944 could potentially take you 11 years to pay off if you just pay the minimum, especially with a high APR. And you will end up paying an estimated total of $1,635 instead of $9. So $944, let's just round it up to $945, could turn out to $1,635, and over the course of 11 years. So that's something that's just with you for just the longest. Like that debt is with you forever. Well, 11 years is not forever, but 11 years is definitely a long time for, just to be dragging along that payment in comparison. If you make the additional charges of $32 and that gives you 3 years, and you save $500 rather than you're spending over or $500 more for 7-8 more years. So definitely read the fine print and understand what it is that you're signing up for and signing up with. All right, so here's some benefits of having credit. So benefits. So you can establish credit. It's convenient. Emergencies, reservations, improve credit score, big ticket items, and you can track monthly spending. This is in regards to credit. This is what happens when you can have credit. The 4 C's. These are 4 C's. When we're talking about credit, there's 4 C's that determine your eligibility for credit, that determines your eligibility. And that's basically based off of your character, which is your credit history, the capacity, your ability to repay, capital, the money for a down payment, and collateral, your valuables used as security for a loan. Consumers under the age of 21 must show that they can afford to make payments, so they would need a cosigner who is 21 plus. So most consumers, whether either there's underage or their financial means or their credit isn't quite where it needs to be yet, will need a cosigner. these 4 C's are generally kind of what determines the credit approval. Your character, that's determined by your credit history. Just again, I want to repeat them. Capacity, your ability to repay. How much money do you bring in? Is this person going to be able to pay back if we give it? Capital, how much money this individual have for a down payment? Collateral, also, what is it that this person has is valuable that could be used as a security for the loan, just in case this doesn't go right? Is there any way else this individual could potentially pay back? All right, so we're going to do debit versus credit. Let's start with debit, then go to credit. Your debit, you're spending your money in comparison to when it's credit card, it's borrowed money. It's money that you have to pay back at the end of the month. Debit, you can't necessarily go into debt because it's only your money. However, you can go into $0 because you can spend all your money. Credit, it can create debt, especially if you overspend. You overspend more than what you were going to bring in a month, and then you have that remaining balance that carries over to the next month, and that may continue to happen. So you have to be careful when using a credit card. Be mindful of unnecessary spending. Be mindful of spending where you do think is necessary, that you have deemed as necessary, but be sure that you're able to pay that money back. Debit, there's generally no rewards. With credit cards, a lot of these credit card companies has rewards, has points systems, and it tells you, okay, well, if you spend this money back, might even match the dollar amount for the year. There's plenty of things, or you might get points for flight points. You might get shop here, you get miles or whatever. There's so many points and rewards, but again, it's there. However, spend responsibly, use it responsibly. There's a very liability with a debit, and there's only a limited liability with a credit card. With debit card, generally requires a PIN. Credit card generally doesn't require a PIN. Just hit the green button, sign, there you are. So there's multiple ways of paying off paying off debt. Snowball effect versus the stacked effect. Generally, basically, if an individual is wants to attack smaller item, or whether it's the bigger item first, and they're just attacking one thing at a time, that is basically like the snowball effect. You're just attacking one thing at a time until it goes away, and then you're going to the other one. The stack, put a little money here, put a little money there, and then eventually, as time progresses, those debts will go away and wipe away. But again, though, this is a plan. Whether it's a snowball effect or it's a stacked effect, this is an approach to paying back your loans. And I think or debt, whatever. So loans, debt, this is an approach that you have to take. And this is a progressive approach because you're taking the approach to say, hey, I know I have this debt. I know that my finances aren't in order. However, I want to get them in order. And this is the approach. One of these two approaches is how I intend on tackling my debt. And this is something that I think definitely is good if someone is definitely in debt, that even that thought alone of saying, okay, well, how can that's moving in the right direction. And then you decide, okay, well, I'm going to go about it this method. That's definitely moving in the right direction. And then actually, once you put those plans and those thoughts into action, and you actually, whether snowball those debts or you stack those debts, well, not stack them up, but, stack relief your debts, then you're in definitely a good position, or a better position than you probably wasn't before. And that's not lingering with you on your credit report or think, okay, well, credit report, before I get too ahead of myself, credit report, we can talk about the things that's in your credit report. What's in your credit report? Basically, your credit report is basically your credit activities. It shows your lines of credit of your current and former accounts and when they were open. Your credit limit, how much credit do you have in credit cards or whatever form, how much, or loans, what is your credit limit and what is your loan amount? Shows your co-signers, and also it shows your payment pattern, showing, okay, what has this person's payment history been? Is this person's payment history has been on time? Now, all of these factors play in. Well, I'm not gonna say co-signers play in, but it definitely plays in until you being able to get some kind of credit, as far as if you want to be a new account, But as far as when it comes to lines of credit, your credit limit, how much you're spending, how much is available for you, your payment history, those are factors that actually affect your credit score. And so you have to be mindful. Your credit report determines your credit score. So it's basically a grade based off of all those things that we just talked about. We're gonna basically put those together and we're gonna grade them. We're gonna give this individual a score. It's a way to measure the credit risk of a person or organization. The higher your credit score, the more likely you are to be able to, I guess you have a good grade. You're looking at an A grade, you're looking at, okay, well, this person isn't much of a risk or whatever, or this business, not only as an individual, you can have credit, a business can have credit as well. But those, again, the combination of factors include types of credit, payment history, amounts owed, and the age of the credit, like new credit versus old credit is how long have you had the accounts. So definitely things I want you all to think about, just so you can all be mindful and understand when we talk about, when individuals might talk about credit report, or you want to know, oh, well, why does everyone stress credit report? Why does everyone stress credit scores? And why does paying on time matter? Why does not spending more than 30% of my credit card matter? Why does not having multiple credit lines and you can't afford them, or you can't, or you're only paying back the minimum? Just all of that stuff matters. If you want to know why it matters, because it determines, you know, your credit report and your credit score. And again, that stuff really helps out whether you're trying to buy a house, a car, building, a business. These are things that, like, you know, individuals, you know, tend to think about, especially nowadays. It seems like almost everyone has an LLC, or a lot of people are ambitious nowadays and want to start businesses and start things for themselves and their families. So these are things, and even if it starts small as a house or whatever the case may be, these are things that you want to be on top of. That way, you're never in need, and I don't want to say you're never in need, but you're just equipped to do what it is that you want to do based off your credit score and your credit report alone. All right, so again, like I said, there's a high end of the credit score, 850, and there's the low end of the credit score is 301. Yeah, you choose where you want to fall in at. Basically, I mean, if it's not the worst thing in the world to be at poor or bad or at a fair or even good, it's not worse. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not bad, or that you're in bad, because just because you're in there at a moment doesn't mean that your situation can't change. But your situation can only change based off of the actions that you take, whether or not, if your credit score, also you want to ensure that your credit report is accurate. I know I'm going to get further down into that line where there can be faulty reports on your credit that you can actually probably, you know, dispute, things of that nature. However, once it's at a certain situation, you can work towards rebuilding that credit. It's not, oh, this is my grade and I'm stuck with this grade and it's on my transcripts and this is forever. No, you definitely can improve your credit score. You can improve your situation. There's various ways and various methods to do. And a lot of those methods are things that we talked about, as far as credit, the amount of credit you have, as far as how much you're utilizing, your credit utilization, the history, are you paying on time, all of that stuff. And again, there's ups and downs with credit. There's at times your credit could take a hit, whether or not maybe you applied for 3-4 credit cards in 1 year. That could definitely, or within the 2 years, that could be something that can affect your credit. However, after those 2 years go off and all those inquiries drop, your credit can increase. Sorry, I know it's a lot of information, but basically I just want to stress the importance of, there's whatever financial situation you in, it can always change. If you're in a worse situation, it could definitely be better. So, you know, I just want individuals to be mindful of that, because a lot of, you know, I've been to university. I've been around a lot of my peers. Some of my peers made bad financial decisions in the past, and that doesn't reflect them today, because the bad decisions that they made in the past, they definitely tried to cover the tracks and fix those situations, and now they're in a better situation. So I think that really matters, and I kind of want you all to understand that your situation can very much change. Again, to improve your score, you can pay your bills on time. That definitely helps. that helps show your payment history. You pay in full. That way, it reduces your credit utilization rate. Your credit utilization rate should stay below 30%. Keep low balances. That's as far as utilization. That way, also you don't have your interest isn't coming after, like your interest isn't high because you're not spending that much, or the balance isn't that great. And also, you should check your reports at least once a year, and this is through the major credit bureaus. I check mine more than once a year, to be quite frank with you. I think I check it, I want to say weekly, because I get a report from some of these credit they have like credit services apps for the phones that I sign up for, phones, computer, internet, that I sign up for, just so I can be on track. And I like to monitor my credit, and it gives me an idea of, okay, like whether it says, okay, hey, yeah, your credit score has, great job, your credit score has increased this month or this time, or if it says, hey, check your credit score has changed, and I see, okay, my credit score might have dipped a few points, and it shows, okay, well, your credit utilization is up this time, and it shows the differences. So again, I want to be on track, just so that way I understand what's going on with my credit, and I understand my financial, understanding my financial reality. The average household has $6,375 in credit card debt, a little over $6,000 in credit card debt. The total credit card debt in the USA is over $1 trillion. 56% of consumers pay their bills in full each month. To me, honestly, I'm surprised about that number, and to me, that's a decent number, especially in full. Granted, just because I'm saying that, because when it says 18% pay only the minimum, I'm saying that just because I would have thought that the number would be even way less than that. I think that a lot of, at times, individuals have, especially when we talk about all this debt, when we talk about there's individuals in debt with trillions, and individuals having these emergency funds, well, not having the means for emergency funds. That's why that number comes as staggering. But I think that 1 in 10 adults are considered invisible to lenders because they have no credit. These, although 50%, that's not like the greatest number in the world, but what I'm saying is that this is debt. Like, the debt is real. The debt is real. Almost 40% of individuals don't have, or almost over 40% of individuals aren't able to pay their bills in full each month, and only 18% pay only the minimum. And there's not a number here for the individuals who just don't pay their bill at all. So these are things that you have to just take in mind and understand that these statistics are real. And credit card debt.
Sorry, Mr. Cassidy, did we lose you?
Hello?
Yeah, you're coming across clear.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so basically, as I was saying, just showing that credit card debt is real, and I'm pretty sure this isn't the first time individuals have heard about it, heard credit scores being mentioned or anything of that nature. Okay, sorry about that. Let's get to this slide. As mentioned earlier, I mentioned credit bureaus as far as checking your credit and ensuring that your credit reports are right. And if they're not right, how do you report your credit? Like, how do you report a dispute, an error on your credit report? So out of the three main bureaus, there are three main bureaus with in the United States. That's Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Each of these you can apply to get your credit report annually from the federal FTC, an annual credit report. And also these individuals will send out your credit report. So if you want once a year, so every 4 months, 4, 8, 12. Okay, yeah, my math's correct. Every 4 months you can apply for it to, get an official copy from your credit report, whether it's with Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax, and just to see where your financial reality is and see where you stand. Or you have one of the credit services app, but these are the official services bureaus. And also you can check your credit, on your own in itself with the apps, or even on these websites. Yeah, thank you. I think if you all have any questions, I'm open for questions. I feel like I have a great deal of information that I really can still share, but that's where I'm at with it now. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I guess a couple of things, that I would want to go through on the credit score angle. First of all, is that, that one is so critical when it comes to not even the ability to access debt, but also even the ability to rent an apartment and that type of thing. What types of things have you seen or experienced when it comes to, credit score and impact on apartments? Because I know that tends to be a huge cutoff, what your credit score is for landlords in terms of being able to get access to housing.
Oh, yes, that is actually correct. So I want to use myself at this moment. So I want to use myself at this moment. So, well, I want to say, like, your credit score, it can hinder you greatly as far as looking at places to rent, the ability to rent. I'm glad you brought that point up because that's a great point. And a lot of people just, maybe if they have bankruptcies on their, or not, like if they have any bankruptcies or evictions, one would say evictions. If you have evictions on your credit reports and things of that nature and stuff like that. So that reflects, your eviction reflects I would assume an inability to pay, or maybe you didn't have payments, but that could be for various reasons. So I don't want to go too deep into evictions, but just going into just the ability to go to a housing, whether it's a property management company, is just simply applying, putting your name on the paper, and that's an application process of you being able to have a credit score where they deem, whether it's a private landlord or whether it's a property management company or an owner who's renting or owner that's renting, they want to be able to, well, it's the same thing as private landlord, but they want to ensure that you have the credit score that they can trust you enough to pay rent or be able to, maintain where you stay. So if you have low credit scores, unfortunately, if you want to stay, like right now, I'm at the office downtown Chicago. If I have a low credit score, if it's in the bad or the poor, the chances of me getting in somewhere here likely to none. And the reality is, I'm going to have to go somewhere where it's probably more, the opportunity is better. The opportunity is for, whether it's, I would say, like more like affordable housing, whereas they try to cater to all individuals, whether they're low income or low credit, no credit. So
yeah, although even affordable housing, they'll even have credit score requirements as well.
Exactly.
For, I think, precisely that same reason, is they want to make sure that, if you're getting into housing, that it is going to be affordable. One of the other issues, and I say this with the prejudice of having been a trustee at a community college, in terms of trying to cut out student loan debt, I think that our community colleges here in Illinois, that is a huge underutilized resource in terms of being able to make sure that you're avoiding a lot of the really large college expenses. So again, what type of other tactics or strategies can younger people, start thinking about and looking at to make sure that, again, they're in a good fiscal position going forward, like not taking on the debt,
Sure.
that type of thing.
Sure. Another great point. So I'm the oldest child of my dad's. I'm my dad's oldest son, or this oldest child, period. So I have younger brothers and younger sisters. And fortunately for me, well, fortunately for them, I was the test, I was the test kid. I was the test dummy. Like, okay, well, you're going to go to college. And like my dad, like he immigrated, he migrated to America. So he didn't have the chance to do college and things of that nature where he's from. So a lot of things were going across the learning curve and trying to understand what's going on. So when I went to college, I went to a college prep school. So I went straight, okay, let's go to university. Okay, I'm going to a university. I feel like I have the grades for the university. They're going to give me some little scholarship money. The rest, I'll just take out in loans. But then I seen my little sister, who's directly younger than me, and I seen what the steps she took when she was in high school. She had took some college courses,
dual credit,
for credit, for college credit. And not only did she do that, once she got finished with her high school, and she stayed local and went to community college. right, like not too far from the house. And then she ended up going downtown at a community college before she ended up going to university. And she has no debt, whereas I'm paying student loan debt right now. And I'm like, wow. And not only not even just to use me, a lot of individuals I've talked to, as in the office, we work with a lot of they came and spoke, like whether it's City Colleges of Chicago, these different community colleges come and speak. And that's how I get some of the points about like just even comparing the student loan debt versus however much you're going to make within your first 5 years of your career. Like,
and even with that, I find too, I'm as an attorney, everyone thinks that attorneys have all these super fantastic salaries. Well, there's one of those instances where when you look at an average, it looks really nice. But if you look at the actual salary distribution of people who are practicing, there's a few people at the high end who really kind of skew the numbers, but most people are actually in a lower, income bracket, and that can really skew the numbers when people are like, oh, I'll take out all of this debt because I'm guaranteed this, heavy 6-figure job, and then that really doesn't materialize for the large majority of job openings that are available. So, that would be another area too, where I think for any student who's looking, particularly if you're thinking about taking on college debt, actually try to find people who work in that field. Right?
Yes.
And actually say, how realistic is it that I'm actually going to be earning this salary by what year? Because, that's another one where I think people are looking a lot more critically at the opportunity cost for a degree and how much return are you going to get for a degree. And, it can really limit your job flexibility. So if your long-term flexibility. So if it's not something that you're really into studying, that's an area where it can be really scary, because the student loans, I think at current interest rates, if you have, what is it like? I think if you have $100,000 in student loans, you're looking at, monthly payments that are going to be over $1,000 a month. So, and that's after tax money. So, those can be, really difficult numbers to pay off. What are some strategies though that, you found for, again, students who are either, in college? You mentioned that your sister, went to community college. Did she live at home, so was able to save on living expenses?
Yes, she did live at home. She lived at home her first two, while she was going to community college, she did live at home. And, obviously the school kind of provided, I don't know if this is cross-wide as far as transportation. It kind of gave her reduced transportation. There are messes of that. Also, not only was she just going to community college because it was getting paid for it, because she was applying for scholarships, and her high school continued, whatever the criteria was that she had to meet for them to continue to pay for her going to school. That's what she did. And granted, even if they did, in community college is way less than a typical university or 4-year college and university would be when it comes to tuition and all of those other costs as well. Yes.
Yeah. And, so for me, when I graduated from college and law school, I also had, student loans, and I made a point. I was going to live at home for that first year and basically just take all of my salary and keep throwing it at all of those student loans, because that's the other thing too, is that they're not dischargeable in bankruptcy. So, those student loans, they will follow you wherever you go until you pay them off. So,
yes.
That's another one. Another thing that you brought up, were auto loans and that type of issue. But, I think, that's another area where I'm a firm believer that a car is a general rule, is a depreciable asset. So, don't go out and buy a new car if it's not critical for your job or something along those lines, because that's another one where you're pulling in a big monthly payment potentially with not only just the car, but insurance, and now gas prices going up. If it's something where, maybe I only need the car once a month on a weekend, there actually might be more affordable alternatives versus, owning a car, particularly if you're in the city or suburban areas.
Yeah, I definitely like that point that you mentioned. I live in Chicago, outside of going to the University of Illinois Springfield. I lived in Chicago, so in going to college, I was in Springfield, rural Springfield, for those 4 years. One thing that I did that I like just through my experience in life. every car that I've owned, I paid cash for. I was fortunate enough to pay cash for. And not saying they weren't the greatest cars. I wasn't driving, pulling down.
Oh no, I drove a beater car that,
yes.
you know.
So I wasn't pulling down the bins, but I was pulling down to something that I could afford, I could manage. If anything was to go wrong with it, I could afford to pay for that part to get it fixed. And I owned the vehicle. If I had any financial issues, I could steal the car if I needed to. Because I did, especially just in Chicago, you have public transportation. So just, buying a car unnecessary, like when you don't, like, that's more like a want as far, especially a new car, brand new car, because the used car do the same thing as a new car.
Right.
It has 4 wheels and it gets you to point A and B.
Yeah. Another thing that I noticed, and again, this is one where I'm going to, kind of toot the horn of our local governments, is that when it comes to, you mentioned like Planet Fitness and that type of thing actually, sorry, we shouldn't say that name, but, healthcare memberships is something where, really look at what kind of value you're getting off of that. That's an area where I would say really explore the types of programming and opportunities that your local park district and public libraries have, because it's amazing the scope of materials you can get from a library, not just books, but, magazines, digital, that type of thing. And even your park district programs, they often have things that are, free or very minimal cost, relatively speaking. So that's another one I would say that, again, if you're really trying to cut costs, but still make sure that you're staying healthy and exercising.
Yes, I agree.
Outside local government does a lot of free programming. So
outside is free. The public park is free. All of that's free.
Yeah. Now, one question for you is, when you were kind of going through this process, did you look to anybody who could be a bit of a financial mentor for you, where you could bounce ideas off? I mean, some people you don't want to take financial advice from them, but other people, who at least could say, no, you really, don't do that now. Prioritize this, or prioritize saving money, prioritize building up that emergency fund. Whether it was somebody you personally knew, or whether it was, like I was actually a big Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey, person, in the sense of, really try to make sure that you're saving for those long-term goals. Was there anyone who you found either an individual or person who was helpful in that regard?
Okay. I love my grandmother so much. So my grandmother always tells me, like, yeah, make sure you're saving your money. Make sure you're saving your money. But then when it's someone that you talk to every day, you might just take those words for granted, and you might not really okay, sure. Or even just like a credit card debt, like there's something you always hear: save your money for a rainy day. These are things you hear, but it's like you don't feel it until it's time to feel it for real. So I think honestly, as far as when it came to me, as far as like seeking out mentors, it wasn't until I started until I was in the university, because honestly, I come from a low socioeconomic background, so it wasn't until I got to college and university and I started I had an internship with the Department of Public Health, and prior to that I met some nice people, but at that point I met some nice people that actually, was sustaining them, like, and had money, like, and were sustaining, and then I just kind of sought out to them as far as financial advice and things that I can go after. So definitely seeking out a mentor or seeking someone for financial advice, whether you know them personally or not, because like Dave Ramsey, I like Dave Ramsey a lot as well. And like, he's just like hardcore, save your money, this, and don't do that. And like, that type of stuff is like stuff I felt like I needed to hear, because growing up, I didn't see that kind of things. I seen otherwise people spending money at like they're rich, but it's like, okay, at the end of the day, it's like back to reality. And then
and I think that's actually a good point too, because I was actually very grateful that I had someone who really made the distinction for me at a young age of, there's a difference between like looking like you're living rich versus are you building wealth, right? And living rich does not build wealth. Building wealth is getting out of debt, or ideally not getting into debt in the first place, really kind of making sure that your existing lifestyle is not getting ahead of where those expenses are. And not only where those expenses are, but after taxes, after you've built up an emergency fund, after you plan for all of these things that, as a general rule, you may not necessarily think about. Here's one question. Does the comptroller's office, do they have any household budgeting tools that we might be able to share, or maybe that's something that we could start creating for some of our members.
Sorry, you said house, like, do we have any like,
Yeah, well, to me, one of the things I think that was very, what I think when you first start living on your own is, you think like, oh, I've got rent and I've got utilities and I have food and maybe you have a car expense. There's so many other things that you really don't start thinking through, everything from, not only the insurance, but are you putting aside any savings for retirement, because the early savings, are so critical. But even, random things like, if you're wearing suits to work, have you accounted for dry cleaning? If you are, going to be, walking, what's your, or using public transportation, how much is that really going to cost? And then, what about the times when you're not, are you going to be using Uber all the time, or are you going to be walking, or, taxis or something along those lines? And really start thinking through, what is your day-to-day lifestyle going to look like? And when you start adding up, how much is it going to cost you to bring your lunch to work? How much is it going to cost for breakfast and dinner? It really does start to hit home that things always cost more, and there are always unforeseen expenses above and beyond, even what you think you budgeted for. So it's like the more granular you can get on budget projections, the better.
Yes, I agree. So I agree. I definitely, everything you're saying, I'm really loving this conversation. Like, I'm hoping everyone, like, this is a great conversation. I'm pretty sure we have a budgeting, but I don't think that it's an in-house thing. I think it might be FTC, but we are working on, like, one of our programs is Bank On, kind of to tend to the underbanked and unbanked, and also we have the governor's financial empowerment task force, where it's specific to the youth. So
and that's actually a good point too, is when it comes to banking, not having a bank account of some type is so detrimental and makes your life so much more difficult.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not like a particular bank, but also credit unions. I think people don't explore credit unions because they can sometimes have lower fees, lower interest rates on a whole host of things. Seeing what opportunities might even be available through an employer to try to help you out. But not having at least some type of bank option, I think, particularly in today's day and age, is really making lives so much more difficult.
Yes. So that's, again, one of our programs, or one of our newest programs is Bank On, that we're like working on, and we actually rolled it out as far as it's on our website. It's something that you probably can explore. And that part of the program is basically trying to increase accessibility and affordability of banking for everyone across Illinois, whether it's in major cities, especially rural areas, they need it the most. So yeah, I definitely agree. This is a great conversation, and I hope definitely we can do this in the future. And I definitely want to I'll inform you, probably call you tomorrow and let you inform you about the Bank On program. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, so I know that we've used up our hours worth of time, and I very much appreciate you doing this presentation for all of us. Again, this is just kind of an introduction for everybody onto some key financial literacy points. But again, this is one of those areas where you can't afford to not be financially literate, because again, your long-term success really does depend on making sure that you understand these financial terms. There are incredible resources out there, both online as well as with places like the comptroller's office. Our office is always happy to be a resource, and we certainly can point you in the right direction as well. So again, I do want to say thank you very much to Mr. Kessie for joining us here today. Again, if there are any other questions, please do feel free to reach out to me at the district office. Again, it is Mazzochi at ilhousegop.org or repmazzochi.com. So thank you again, everybody. We really appreciate it. Hope this was helpful to you. And please do give us feedback so that we can make sure that we are delivering information that you find is timely, that is useful to you. And if you have any suggestions for other programming or information that you would like us to start getting out to other district residents, if you have a question, someone else in the district probably does too. So we want to make sure that we can inform you on as much information as we can, and particularly make sure that you're using the state resources that we have available. So thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you very much to Mr. Kessie from the Comptroller's office.